Hi, everybody. I love that song. When that came out, all my friends said, Deborah, did he write that for you? I love this song, Happy. Thank you so much for starting us with that, Kurt. And we have a fun show today. In studio with us today is James Thomas Bailey. James, thanks for being here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. I'm so happy to have you. Happy. There's that word again. And what you do kind of makes people happy, right?
We hope so.
You do a lot of things. So
Yeah.
we're going to start with one of the first things that you're here for. You are the artistic director of CSZA Los Angeles, which is Comedy Sports LA.
Right.
And that's been running here for 30 years. It's a show that you've been doing out of LA for 30 years, the longest running show. And a lot of people don't know about it. Take it away. Tell us, what is CSZA?
Well, Comedy Sports is competitive team improv comedy. So it plays like a sport. It's not comedy about sports. It's played on AstroTurf with two teams in soccer-style uniforms, a referee. It's a competition to see who's funnier. And because the teams are always different and the games are always different, you could come see shows every night and it would always feel different.
What do you mean the teams are always different? When it's improv, you're saying you just pluck people out of the
No, they're professional performers in our company,
Okay.
but we put different performers up every show.
Okay.
So you always see different combination of people and different combination of games. And we have fouls, just like any good sport. So there's a foul for being dirty, there's a foul for being corny, there's a foul for being boring. And the audience yells suggestions, the audience decides the winners, and it's a show where we are constantly involving the audience, so it feels very different.
Improv is great. I mean, I've taken a couple of improv classes. It's scary because you've really got to be able to play off the other actors and certainly the people in the audience. So you've got these two teams. Just sort of, do we have any video that we can use? So you've got these two teams, right?
Yep.
And what are they doing?
Well, they're competing in a series of head-to-head games, or they compete individually, and then we have audience judges that decide things. Sometimes they earn points. We just held the World Comedy Sports Championship in LA a couple weeks ago.
I think we have the video. Are we running that video now?
Yeah, and we had 28 teams here from 28 cities around the United States and England, and it's a competition just to see who's more entertaining. So we won the tournament, actually. And we took home the meaningless cup. That's what we call it. And
the meaningless cup.
Yeah.
That would be something I would win. The meaningless cup. I love that.
Well, it's just so we don't. It doesn't. Our heads don't get too big. Things don't get too important.
That's right. I mean, you don't want to take yourselves too seriously.
No.
So you get the meaningless cup. That's
right,
fun.
Exactly.
So, like, what kind of stuff is going on? Are they all yelling at each other from sideline to sideline? If we can just keep playing the video.
No, we're improvising games. So, for example, you might throw out a suggestion for a title of a musical or a Shakespearean play that's never been written, and we would improvise that in front of the audience. Or we'd bring an audience volunteer on stage, and we'd take a day from their life, and we would recreate that for them. Or we might do a scene in forward and reverse, like we had an imaginary remote control. They'd do the scene, and we could play it backward and forward as many times as we want.
That's really funny, too. I love that.
It's really fun. And the greatest part is we have an impossibly wide demographic because we don't do negative humor. You could bring your kids, you could bring your mom, you could bring your boss, and everybody laughs together. And that is
the boss.
That is
That'll get you a raise.
That is a rare thing in Los Angeles. There's almost nothing else I can think of where people can bring their whole family and laugh together and not have it be too kiddie. You know what I mean?
What a fun place to do a party, like a birthday or something. That's really cool.
Lots of birthday parties, lots of corporate events, lots of touring shows.
So where do you do it out of?
We are at the El Portal Theater in North Hollywood in the Arts District. We have our own theater within El Portal. It's CSZ Theater, and it's inside the El Portal Theater, right on Lancashire near Magnolia.
How do you stay a show 30 years? How do you keep that going? That's almost impossible, right? I mean, nothing has run that long. I know, not even like Tony and Tina's wedding in New York, I don't think. I mean, this thing is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we don't really advertise. So we're sort of everybody's favorite secret in LA. It's word of mouth. It's customer evangelization. People come, they bring their friends. Those friends come back with new friends. And we used to advertise like crazy. And then we just stopped, and people bring other people. And so we've quietly continued for 30 years. We opened in 1988. I never imagined it would run this long.
So what happens? I can heckle somebody who's up there? I mean, is that what happens with the
Well,
audience? Because I've also done a little stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And when people yell at me from the audience, I actually love it, you know? I love it because then I can play off of them.
They talk back to us all the time, but they don't really heckle us because we have a foul called the brown bag foul. So if anybody says anything that's rude or crude or offensive, they have to wear a brown paper bag over their head to finish the game. But that's also called an audience member. So if an audience member heckles or yells something obnoxious, we stop the show. We go out. The referee goes out with a brown paper bag and puts it over the audience member's head.
Good to know.
Yeah, so they
Good
learn
to know.
They learn the rules pretty quickly, but it's all in good fun. It's all very lighthearted. So we don't ever have that sort of stand-up comedy problem.
Let's talk a little bit about improv.
Yeah.
Because this is not all you do. You
Right.
do quite a bit. So you do, you've actually done a lot. Let's go to the corporate training a little
Sure.
bit that you do. I mean, a lot of corporations could use a little bit of fun, right, in their day. So what do you do? Let's say, I know you've worked for what?
Well,
Universal, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Disney. What do you do? They bring in to say,
Well, sometimes we get brought in to fix problems,
Yeah.
communication problems, or new teams forming, and sometimes it's they want to improve their relationships or their working environment. You said earlier that improv is hard, but actually, everybody improvises. Your whole life is improvised. Our
you know what I meant by that? Forced improv is hard.
Yeah.
I remember I took a class, and I don't know, they said, be a tree.
Right.
So you're a tree.
Right.
And then the guy next to you decides to be a plum.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, what's he doing? I couldn't really tell
Yeah.
what he was doing. He was probably a terrible actor, and I didn't know he was trying to be a plum.
Yeah.
You need to have other good
Well,
improv.
it's sort of people get in their own way. They think, the number one thing people say in a class, I can't think of anything. But you do, of course, all the time. We're improvised.
I
This
just
is
think it's too
improvised
stressful
dialogue.
if you're in a
Yeah.
class. But like you're right.
Yeah,
Like right now
yeah.
we're improvising and we're
Right.
coming up with answers.
And
we-
improv is part of everybody's life. So when we go into a corporation,
Yeah.
we're teaching that team how to use the skills of improv, trust and listening and focus and awareness of each other, taking a problem and turning it into something positive. And so we teach them the skills and then they apply it to their industry. We're not trying to make anybody a comedian. So when we go in to teach Disney or Google, or I've taught lumberjacks, I've taught nuns, I've taught German chemists.
Nuns. What have you taught the nuns?
The same thing I teach the people at Google.
Let's do a little bit. Pretend that I'm either a nun or I'm somebody that you work with at Google. What would you teach me?
Well, here, let's do a little game together.
Learn.
All right. So we just talked about conversation being the improvisational dialogue of our life. So we're going to have a conversation, and it's called first letter, last letter. And so you'll say something to me, and the first letter of my response will be the last letter of what you just said.
Okay,
And
you
then
ready?
when I'm done talking, you'll take the last letter.
You're very handsome.
Easy for you to say. I don't always feel that way when I look in the mirror.
Ralph. I don't know what to say because I'm trying to find a letter that begins with an R. See, you got me off guard.
Yeah.
But that's what you do with people?
But, well, that sort of thing. But what makes this hard is not the spelling part. That's what everybody panics over, is they have to think of a letter. It's
yeah, I
that
was thinking, wait, what does it end with, an R? And I'm like, oh, no. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but what actually makes it hard is it forces you to listen to people to the end of the sentence, which is something
That's true.
we're not very good at anymore because we're all in a
I was
140
about to
character
say,
world.
because we're all over here.
Right.
You know, and then we're like, what? What'd you say? Oh, yeah, I got it.
Right.
I'm with you. I
and
got you.
so we don't really listen to each other before we formulate our thoughts. We're already creating the next sentence before people are done. So it's those kinds of things.
So basically, you're sitting down with businesses and with the people who work there and saying, listen, and you're just kind of reacquainting them with how to listen to each
Yeah,
other.
it's the soft skills nobody teaches you in college. Nobody teaches you to listen. We all expect everybody to know how to do it, but nobody teaches you how.
You know, I was with my son this weekend, and we were talking about that, and we were also talking about the quiet skill of learning to calm oneself's anxiety, you know, when they have anxiety and a little bit of meditation. Those are the things we need to learn when we're
Right.
younger.
Right.
Right? Listening,
Right.
calming oneself, a little cooking, maybe sewing, the stuff that you need
Right.
in life. But
Right.
school doesn't really teach you that. You got to go out of school and learn this when you go to
Well,
work.
there's a lot of life stuff that's not taught in a book, and
Yeah.
and you're called upon to use it all the time. And failing, taking chances and taking risks and failing are essential to creativity. You can't be creative if you don't fail, because failing makes you turn in another direction and try something new. And eventually you stumble onto something that you've done that nobody else has done. So if you aren't willing to risk and you aren't willing to fail, you can't ever really be creative. And that's
Failing is scary.
Of course.
And you know that. And
Yeah.
so many people won't even bother to try
Right.
because it's so scary to fail. And I always just say, I don't know what's scarier, to fail or to still be sitting on the couch wondering what could happen. To me, that's just flat out terrifying.
Yeah,
you know?
most of the world avoids mistakes, and improvisers can't wait for the next one, because we've gotten over the hump of knowing that when that mistake happens, that's an offer. That's something I didn't know was coming, and what can I do with that? How can I turn that into something positive? But most of us are so afraid of what might happen that will alter our daily
Why?
plan.
What are we so afraid of, by the way?
Well, that's a good question.
like, what's really going to happen? I mean, I screw things up all the time. I've
Yeah.
gotten used to it.
Yeah.
So, but I'm one who likes to take chances.
But in the
If I
corporate
don't-
environment, sometimes people are afraid to do that because they think they're being compared to their coworkers.
or they could lose their job
Exactly.
or whatever. I
Right.
get it, but
Right.
is that effective? Has it been effective at a place like Google or Disney? And
Because you have to build you have to build a culture. You have to build a common vocabulary and a common experience for people where they feel that, and especially in a creative place like a Disney or a Google or somewhere like that, you have to have that freedom. Otherwise, you can't create.
you've also brought these skills to the State Department. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
So I work occasionally as a cultural specialist for the United States for the State Department, and I've worked with the American Embassy in Cyprus.
What have you done there?
Well,
And what do you do? You just show up at the American Embassy in Cyprus and you do a little improv and say, "Hey, you over there." I mean, how does that work?
Sort of. It's a twofold thing there. Cyprus is the last divided capital in the world. It was divided by war in 1974.
Right.
So you have Greek Cypriots in the south and Turkish Cypriots in the north, and it's a divided country. So from the American Embassy's point of view, they want to teach the skills of improvisation about cooperation and collaboration and acceptance to a younger generation in hopes that those skills will someday aid in a country coming together again.
Wow.
I work with it's called THOC, which is the Theater Organization of Cyprus, the state theater there. I was just there in May, and I teach theater techniques to teachers who then teach them to kids, and hopefully someday that goal of the embassy will be realized, of course. My first trip there, I taught 700 teachers, and I've also taught bi-communal workshops with businesswomen from the north and south on the Green Line at the Fulbright Center. I've taught theater groups on both sides. I've taught at the university there. So it's really just a matter of sort of teaching these same techniques. And I'll tell you, even though I teach with translation, with Greek or Turkish translation, everybody's the same. Everybody wants to be happy, healthy, and loved.
It is so true, and I always say that to everyone. We are all the same. It's the governments that are separating us.
Yeah,
It's true.
and I was so worried that my techniques or my jokes wouldn't work,
right, and they did.
but they do.
Yeah,
Because
don't you find that, especially the more you travel?
Yeah.
We all have so much in common, no matter where we travel to.
Right.
It's the governments that are holding us back, but that's a conversation for another time. I think that's wonderful that you
Yeah,
do
it's
that.
exciting work. It was scary at first. It was scary, like you said, you get off the plane, you go, okay, what am I going to do? I mean, the first time I taught,
I'll bet. You're
there
like,
were TV
"Oops."
cameras there, and the gentleman from the Ministry of Culture and the director of the State Theater and the embassy people and 150 people waiting to take a class with me, and I had a moment of, what am I doing? And
Yeah,
then-
like really? I mean, I was just doing this whole thing in LA with Comedy Sports Los Angeles, and now I'm over here in Cyprus. Okay,
right.
but it
And
translates over.
And
literally.
I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I always do, and it worked out great, and I have lifelong friends there now. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus you've made such an impact. That's what's more
I hope
important.
so. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really important. Okay, so you work with the State Department over in Cyprus.
Yeah.
You work with top companies like Google and Disney and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
You run Comedy Sports Los Angeles 30 years.
Yeah.
I also know that a large component of your business is education.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. And by the way, I don't want to forget that you also have written a book. I want to talk about that
Oh,
later. You've
sure.
done a lot of stuff. I mean, how do you get this in a half an hour with a guy like him?
That's very nice.
It's true.
I'm very involved in theater education in the state.
Yeah.
I'm the past president of the California Educational Theater Association. I currently co-produce the annual State Theater Teacher Conference. But we teach improvisation through comedy sports in high schools to teach kids the skills of improv, the same ones we teach to Google and to the nuns that they apply to their business.
the nuns.
We teach to kids to impact their own lives. Now, they're playing the junior version of our show in their schools. So they're playing Comedy Sports High School League.
That must be a lot of fun.
It is, as varsity sport. And they play home and away games, and they can earn varsity letters and the whole bit. We're just,
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
yeah, we're about 1,200 kids a year do this, about 75 schools,
Whereabouts?
all over Southern California, from San Diego to Ventura, Palos Verdes, up to, what's up? Upland. We're all over the place.
Up there somewhere. I got you.
But the kids sign up because they want to be comedians. We don't tell them all the life skill stuff they're going to get. If
Right.
we did
It's
that,
sort of a fun, sporty thing to do, if you don't, especially if you're not really going to do a sport like football. This is sort of a combination of everything.
yeah. And if we told them what they were going to get out of it, none of them would sign up.
Yeah,
right?
no, I got it because
Yeah.
it sounds like something that's going to be force fed to them,
Yeah.
right?
But they're on stage, And comedy sports in their schools draws people into the theater that wouldn't normally come because sports is in it. So everybody knows what to do with sport. You cheer, you scream, you boo the ref, you vote for your team, you all that stuff. Everybody knows
Do you
how
have any
to.
pictures of this? Anything at all?
Well, we might have something, but we do it in the schools, and it draws new people into the theater. In some of our high schools, comedy sports actually funds their arts program in their school. They make so much money with comedy sports that they can fund their other things.
So you go in and you're in the high schools, and how many kids generally sign up for this? And is it a once a week program?
It's about
or-
1,200 a year. They all do they usually rehearse, practice 1 week, 1 day a week. We see them once a month. We have a couple of big improv events with all the schools in October and February. And then they play all year and have home and away games. And we even have a little tournament for them.
This is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in touch with my high school and
Yeah.
say, why don't we have this? At least I don't think we
Yeah.
do. Is it mostly in the public schools or public and private or a little of both?
Both. We're in Orthodox Jewish schools. We're in Catholic schools. We're in private schools. We're in public schools. And the kids all play together and they all learn the same thing. And years later, after they're all out, I get letters from them telling me how much it affected their life. And some of our high school league kids have gone on to perform with us.
Yeah, tell me about some of those guys. I mean, you've had some pretty heavy hitters.
Well, Danny Ricker, who's
Yeah.
in our company, is the co-head writer for Jimmy Kimmel. And he came up starting in the high school league, worked his way through. Rachel Bloom, who's on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, she was in our high school league. Jessica Williams, who's on The Daily Show, was in our high school league and our college team at our company. Jeff Davis, who's on Whose Line Is It Anyway, came up through our high school league and through our professional company. So we've had many, many people through the years that have gone on to do things. And a lot of teachers and a lot of grateful parents, actually, kids that are now parents that are not afraid to play with their kids. Because for most of us, we stop playing when we're about 12, and we don't play again until we have to model it for our children. And sometimes that's a bumpy transition.
I don't get that. What do you mean we don't play again?
Most people...
I always play with my kids. In fact, they tell me to grow up.
With your kids, but most adults, if they don't have children, are often... many people are too constricted to really have fun, and they have to give themselves permission to play.
Yeah, that wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
But
I was born playful.
Yeah, that's
So-
rare. That's rare. Actually, we're all born playful. You just hung on to it.
Yeah, I had no choice. It's just my personality. Although I will tell you, when I'm told, okay, perform, it's like, then I'll start to freeze. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, but a lot of people couldn't possibly do what you're doing right now.
Well, because it's natural, as you would call it. It's
For
a little
you.
bit of improv.
Right.
For me, it's just a conversation, and that's
Yeah.
what I do. I talk all day. My family just says, would you please be quiet? And I'm like, but I can't.
Yeah.
So to me, that's why I got into this line of work, because I love to ask people questions. I'm just probably curious, nosy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But when asked to perform, that's where I will just, freeze. And I'm just a little bit
Yeah.
about this. I did take some comedy classes, or one, and then I ended up doing a little bit of stand-up comedy because I'm writing a story about my background. And somebody said, you really, really should perform it yourself. But the thought of being in front of a live audience is way different than this guy, which is a camera.
Yeah.
Because it's a camera, right? Nobody's looking at me except Kaylee over there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just honestly
Totally
it takes,
different.
It takes practice, and I'll tell you that I can improvise on television, and I can improvise in front of 2,000 people, and I can teach a class of 800 and not be nervous. But ask me to do stand up, and I'll be a nervous wreck. And the reason is because when I'm doing stand up, I'm by myself in front of that microphone. And if it doesn't go well, there's nobody to save me or take care of me.
See, if it doesn't go well, I'll look out into the audience and start to blame them. It's like, look, you know what I mean? Pay attention.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Or if the lights are there and I don't have to see them,
Yeah.
then it's okay.
All right, well, then you found a way around it. But for me, in improv, the great saving grace of that is I know that if you and I are improvising together, my goal is to take care of you and make you look good, and you have the same goal with me. So if I run into trouble,
That is true.
You're in to help me, she's in to help me,
You can only hope.
right?
You can only hope.
Yeah, I'm not alone. So we're all working for the same goal. And so
Right.
it brings, to me, it brings great ease to what I do as opposed to stand up, which freaks me out a little bit.
Well, I'll invite you to my next stand-up. How's that?
I would love that.
Yeah. I mean, I keep getting invited back. I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is not what I do for a living. But again, another show. So, good Lord, I don't even know where else to begin. The book you wrote, Teaching in Improvisation, A Practical Guide for Theater Educators.
Yeah.
When did you write that?
About 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really aimed at the classroom educator, theater educator, because improv. It used to be when comedy sports first started. There were only a handful. I think there were two other groups in town. There were the Groundlings, and there was a group called Mice.
I like that name, Mice.
And
I haven't heard of that one.
yeah, we had to explain to everyone what improv was. That was always, we had to explain what it was. When Whose Line Is It Anyway came on the air, then we would just say, have you ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's like that. Now, especially in Los Angeles, there are improv comedy troupes everywhere. Almost every college has one that's formed by a bunch of guys that decide they want to have an improv group. And so it's everywhere. So kids demand it sort of in the theater classroom as a form of theater.
They kind of need it, don't you think? I mean, to be sort of quick on your feet
a
little bit.
But the irony is that most theater educators and even most actors never have any formal training in improvisation at university. They do it. We're asked to get up and do it. You get up and we're going to improvise something, but nobody ever teaches you how. So then when a teacher gets a classroom full of kids, teens that know more about improv than they do, in a way, though they think they do, that's when it gets difficult. So I wrote a book to help teachers understand how to teach it as a theatrical tool. So to aid the kids in all the work they do. And Viola Spolin, of course, with her work with children and games, she's the master, and we're all doing our best to live up to her. But having been in the classroom myself for many years and understanding the challenges of being a teacher, I wrote this for them. So it's really a book to guide teachers in the teaching of improvisation.
Wow. So what do you do? What were you like as a kid? Let me ask you that. I mean, were you the kid that was always performing?
Yeah.
You were.
I was.
You weren't like the nerd. A lot of people who perform say, "Oh, I was the nerd in the back of the classroom and nobody talked to me." That wasn't you.
No, I was kind of a nerd, but I was friends with the nerds. I was friends with the other guys too. I was over involved. I did too much. I still do too much. I have a problem saying no.
Yeah, you do too much. Look at you.
Yeah, I know.
I don't even know if I'll get through everything.
I have a problem. Yeah.
You have a problem. Listen, talk to me about that.
I take things on and then I don't want to let them go.
Yeah, but isn't it better? Isn't it better to be like that than somebody like we talked about earlier, than sits around and doesn't? Because you're not fearful. You want to take it on and you got a lot to give.
I enjoy it. So, but I was that way as a kid too. I wanted to try everything and do everything, and then once I did it, I usually didn't want to give it up, so I just kept adding more to it.
Did you want to act?
Yeah, I figured that out probably when I was ninth grade. I decided I wanted to do that.
Hey, but
Either
wait
that
a
or
minute.
broadcast journalism. That was the other option.
Oh, really? No, what happened there?
I went the theater route instead.
Yeah. I wanted to do a little acting, and I went this route instead.
Yeah, I went
like
to a
Eagles
double
song.
major. Yeah, I was a double major in both for a while.
Oh, really?
And then I couldn't get all the classes in, so I had to let one go, and I had more classes done in theater, so I went that route.
Oh, very interesting. So we kind of were opposite. But you were an actor. I mean, look, you've done.
Yeah, I
you've
still
done,
am. I
Yeah,
still
you
am,
were. You are. You're always
yeah.
an actor. Once an actor, always an
Yeah.
actor. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So what? You were in the.
Oh.
Give me the list.
Oh, those are old credits.
Oh,
But,
so what? A credit's a credit. I was in a major motion picture. It's an old credit, but it's a credit, so a credit's always there.
Yeah, I've done a lot of commercials. I've done a lot of theater. I
Tuesdays with Maury.
Oh, Tuesdays. Well, yeah, I had a musical improv group for a while called the
that's kinda funny.
Impromptones, and we improvised songs. We sang.
Look
to
at you laughing.
We sang to Jack Lemmon on that show.
Oh, that's really
that
funny.
was a dream.
Okay,
It was
that's
so-
going back. If people don't know who, I don't. I have to see that. I didn't
Yeah,
get to see it.
basically we sang Jack Lemmon, and that's what we did in that show. But it was great meeting him. It was so, when you meet a hero, that's really exciting.
Wow.
And I've done a lot of theater, and I still do all that stuff. But I've directing and producing has taken up more of my time now. But I've done all
Here
that
in
stuff.
Los Angeles, a lot of directing and producing. Because
Yeah,
I know you live up in Napa.
I do. I commute. I'm in Napa during the week, teaching up there and producing up there, and on the weekend I'm here in LA producing and teaching. So
We were talking earlier that Los Angeles, you were telling me, has the largest theater community of small theaters anywhere else in the country. And
In
I
the
said
world.
to you, in the world, which I find hard to believe because, come on, New York.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking Broadway. Everybody knows Broadway and off Broadway. But we've got that many small theaters going on here
there's
in
more.
LA.
This is an old statistic, so I can only assume it's increased. But at one point, there were about 1,500 theater productions, small theater productions, done here a year. And of course, New York, we all think of Broadway, but in LA, there's more small theater, new works, experimental theater happening than anywhere else in the country. People just don't know it because we're such a
film and TV
TV, Universal Studios, Disneyland, Venice Beach. That's what people come to when they come here. When you go to New York, what's the first thing you think of for tourism? Theater. You go to Broadway. That's what you do. It's just a different world. So we think of New York that way.
It's a lot of great. I happen to be plugged in with a lot of the small theater here in Los Angeles, and it is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
A lot of small theaters, great ones. I mean, for people who want to go out, it's just, you'll find it. It's there.
And we have a very large Fringe Festival. I want to give a plug to the Hollywood Fringe Festival and also the North Hollywood Fringe Festival. They're doing great work, and there's all kinds of new things happening all the time. It's just that we just don't hear about them in Los Angeles the way you hear about Broadway shows. There just isn't the money behind those little productions. But there's a lot of theater here. Any night of the week. 7 days a week. You want to see theater? No problem.
Oh, that's terrific. And you direct? You direct a lot of these.
Yeah.
You've done over 50, correct?
Yeah.
Here in LA.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's great. So what's next up for you? What can we tell people to look for? Obviously, to go to the performance of Comedy Sports Los Angeles.
Right.
And that runs when?
It runs Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. We have other shows as well. I produced a show the last 8 years called Chickspeare, which is all-female improvised Shakespeare. And we're on hiatus with that right now, but we took that.
What is that about, Chickspeare?
It was improvised Shakespeare, but we've put that on hiatus now, and we are.
I would never be able to improvise Shakespeare. I had a tough enough time just reading it. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we have other shows. We have a show right now called Duel, which is a two-person improv competition. But Comedy Sports, our signature show, plays Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and pretty much 52 weeks a year, unless Christmas falls on the weekend.
Wow.
But,
And how many folks are in the audience?
Our theater's one of the small theaters. It's about 100 people.
Oh, I'm going to bring a whole pile of my friends and come together.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun because the show doesn't stop at the stage; it continues into the audience. So.
And you're in schools. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you? Look you up, all that stuff.
Go to our website, cszla.com.
Okay.
Or comedysportsla.com. And just remember, Comedy Sports ends in a Z.
Okay.
Yeah, C like Charlie, S or C like comedy, S like sports, ZLA.com.
I love this. I've loved talking to you because you're not just doing one thing. And in this business, you don't just do one. You need to be involved in so many other
Everybody
areas.
has to cobbles together their artistic life, you know.
No, that's exactly right.
that's
and
how
you
it
can't
starts,
just throw up one idea into the air because it's going to fall down. You've got to have multiple.
Yeah.
And I love that you've done that and you managed to catch them all. And you're doing
trying,
such a great job. Thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here.
I'm
I
really
appreciate
thrilled
it.
to
It's
be
really
here.
been a lot of fun. And I can't wait to come see your show again, too.
Yeah, please do.
And bring a pile of my nutty friends. So that should be interesting for real. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here for another fun edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. However, before I end the show, I have to give a shout out to my amazing and beautiful producer, Misty Salbert. Misty, are you out there? I hope she's not sleeping. She just had a baby. That's why I'm saying that, because she has a 2-year-old, she has a newborn, and I'm here to give a shout out to her newborn, Chase Paul Salbert, born on the 20th of this month, 8 pounds, 15 ounces. Nice one, Misty. He was 22 3/4 inches long. He's nice and healthy. I'm happy to say, because a couple of days after being born, some days, sometimes it's a little tough when you're having a baby, it's just a little bit of a tough go, but now they're all home. She's got her 2-year-old boy there and her husband and everybody's there, and she's handling everything, and she's even emailing everybody about the show. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
So thank you, Misty. We all love you, and congratulations to the new baby. Anyway, thank you for being here, and please find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you can listen on Apple Podcasts and the iHeartRadio app and beyond, and we will see you next time.